it's an amazing story because he's done a film called Ice Eagles, American Aviation in Antarctica. They have a airstrip there. What goes on? How do you land on skis? What do you do?
Yes.
If that was a yes.
Well, first of all, the film is the first film to document the entire history of the U.S. aviation in the Antarctic, from Admiral Byrd's 1928 to 30 expedition.
Because Byrd was the first up there, really. Well, I mean,
he was the first to fly for the U.S. in Antarctica. And it carries through all of the U.S. expeditions, including the current Operation Deep Freeze, which began in 1955 and continues today with support of the Air National Guard 109th Airlift Wing out of Scotia, right here.
Was there a woman up there once that had to do surgery or something? Or
there was a midwinter evacuation.
Evacuation, yes. I remember that. What's amazing to me, and I'm a novice. I know nothing about planes other than they use oil and fuel and things like that. But you said that it goes down to like 115, we'll round that number off, 115 degrees below zero. What happens to the fuel lines? How does that work?
Well, those temperatures are winter temperatures when they're not flying. But even when they
they are not flying that, okay.
Even when they are, they can experience as much as 50 below zero.
Okay.
And it does bad things to an aircraft.
That's what I wondered about that. That's why when I saw this and I'm thinking, how does that even happen?
Yeah, the oil starts to congeal.
Yeah.
The fuel is denser, and it causes problems. So Admiral George Dufek, who was the first commander of Operation Deep Freeze, said that flying in Antarctica was the most dangerous flying outside of combat.
That's what I put that up on the screen because I found that to be a very interesting.
And the history bears that out.
Yeah.
And it is the most unforgiving environment on the Earth.
Yeah.
And particularly in the early days, there was very little support in the way of rescue if you got into trouble.
You were on your own?
Largely you were. That improved over time, but even now it's a risky undertaking to fly down there.
And they have I don't say Quonset hut, but there's facilities there that are set up to withstand the winds and the cold and.
Yes, the U.S. established its first permanent bases during Operation Deep Freeze, 1955 to 57. The main base was at McMurdo.
McMurdo, yeah, that's right.
But they also had several other bases scattered around the continent. Maybe this is a good time to.
Let's take a look at the film.
Before we do that,
okay,
let me set the clip up. And unfortunately, there's no sound with it. Weren't able to produce the sound, but I'll.
For the entire film?
For the clip.
For the clip. Okay, that's okay.
I'll have to narrate
that's
portions
good.
of it.
That's really better, even.
Yeah. So to set it up, in October of 1956, the U.S. Navy was undertaking the second year of Operation Deep Freeze. Deep Freeze provided the logistics for the U.S. program during the International Geophysical Year. That was a global undertaking by scientists to explore the entire world, to gain more knowledge about the world. That was to begin in 1957.
When they're showing something now.
If we could stop that for just a second. We're a little ahead of. Can you stop?
Yeah,
and
they
rerun
did.
that?
They stopped.
Okay. So the U.S. established bases down there to support that undertaking, and most of the men and supplies and equipment came down by ship.
Oh.
But the heavy aircraft had to be flown from New Zealand directly down, which is 2,200 miles one way. So the aircraft could only carry enough fuel to get down there. They didn't have enough.
So they couldn't get back.
They didn't have enough to return. So therefore, there was a point of safe return. If they got beyond that, they had to continue and land at McMurdo regardless of the conditions. And the weather can change there in a matter of minutes. So this clip is from that
Okay.
season. Now, Admiral Dufek was on the first plane to land. He got in safely, but then the weather started to close in.
Okay, so let's take a look, and then you can talk over it as well.
So Dufek arrived safely, but he had 5 aircraft that were still on the way. They were all beyond the point of safe return. The first plane was piloted by a young lieutenant named David Carey. It was a P-2V Neptune. And Dufek was very nervous about it because he knew they had to land, and the conditions just kept getting worse and worse. The first time that Carey had attempted a landing in Antarctica, and he caught his tip, he lost his bearings, caught his tip, the plane cartwheeled and disintegrated. Carey and 3 crewmen were killed instantly,
Oh my.
and another person on board died a few hours later.
And there's not a lot of landmarks there either.
Well,
are
as you
there?
can see, there's no horizon. That was
Yeah,
the
that's what I
difficulty.
mean. There's nothing.
But the other planes were on their way down, and they had no choice but to land. So that's a good place to end it there.
But that's what I'm thinking. Everything's white, you know, it's sort of like,
It's
you know.
it's called a whiteout.
Yeah, and not
And-
only that, but it would seem to me with storms and things, even
Yes.
that would even change it.
Absolutely.
Like there might be a hill there, and then all of a sudden it's gone.
Absolutely. You become disoriented.
Yeah.
Carey's plane was not the last to be lost. During the first 4 years of deep freeze, the U.S. lost 18 aircraft and 16 men. It was the highest casualty rate of any squadron in the U.S. Navy.
And you can see this is what you're talking about. It's more dangerous
It
than
is-
combat. Yeah.
It is extremely dangerous.
Yeah.
You never take it for granted, and
And you're fighting Mother Nature. You're not fighting an enemy,
Exactly.
another enemy.
the adversary is the Antarctic continent.
Yeah, yeah.
So what I attempted to do was to cover the history, but also show how brave these people were. You were taking a big risk to fly down there.
It's an amazing. I can't even imagine because you're talking about. I mean, just cold and weather conditions that you can't predict. I mean, I'm sure there isn't, you know, a weather forecaster sitting there. I'm sure that there are weather forecasters that do globally, but still, and with our satellites, we might be able to make some predictions.
It certainly improved, but you have to remember that
In
you're,
the
you're
50s,
trying.
it was a lot different.
In the 50s, you had maybe 3 or 4 stations that could report weather
Yeah,
conditions.
and there were no satellites at
And
that
there were
time.
no satellites. So this was over the span of a continent the size of the United States and Mexico combined.
Yeah, and I actually pulled a map out because I thought, let me take a look and see, because I thought maybe if someone else is interested, there it is, right there.
Yes.
That's a big area.
Yes, it's a very big area.
Yeah. And
So-
is any of it populated? Yeah, other than the,
There are.
I mean, I know that there's like natives that.
Yes, there are
and so-
winter over bases. So there are a number of permanent bases there that are occupied year round.
But there's no indigenous people that live.
There are no indigenous people that live there.
Yeah, it's like inhospitable.
It's completely inhospitable.
And there's
Everything.
probably maybe a polar bear once in a while. I don't even know if you got polar bears up there.
No, there's
Or
no
down there,
bears in the
whatever.
south.
Yeah.
Just penguins and seals
Okay.
and whales. But it is inhospitable. The only way you survive is to bring everything that you need. So, as I said, it's very unforgiving.
Right. And how would someone get a hold of this film?
I
It's
have
going
it
to be in
available.
libraries or?
Hopefully, that will be the case one day. It's not yet. I have it available through my website
Okay.
at www.g.
Because anybody in aviation
gwillow.com.
should probably take a look at this film.
I think it would be of general interest. It is a remarkable story. As I said, the courage of the people who did this is remarkable.
Have you given a program up at the Empire State Aerosciences Museum?
No, I have not.
You really, that would be a good place. I think you'd get a big audience there because they're so interested in aviation of all kinds, and especially this would be something off their radar, so to speak. So, yeah, so check them out. They're a really great group of guys over there. I want to thank you, Tom, for being here and to talk about this amazing group of people who endured such treacherous adventures, I guess you'd call it an adventure, although it was a job. Amazing, amazing. And you've been there.
Yes, I have 3 times.
It's been a little cold, right?
it got a little cold. That's where I got my inspiration. And I should mention
No
too,
perspiration, but
no,
you got
well, some of that. But I should mention too that I interviewed 70 people for this film
Okay.
around the country. Most of them were involved in the history. Going back, I interviewed a fellow from the 1939 to 41 expedition.
Wow, that's a while. Back.
Robert Johnson, who is still living.
Yeah, really. Must have been his 90s, close to 100.
He's 96
yeah.
now.
Yeah, close to 100.
8 of those people have passed away since I started this film.
But you got them on film.
Yes.
That's the important
Yes.
thing. We made a visual oral history on it, and I thank
That was
you so
important
much
to
for
me.
doing that. Yeah, I think it's so important to do that. Tom Henderson, filmmaker, you can check out his film on his website. Check that out. And go to my website to get more information on this as well. And this will be posted on Facebook as well. So and also Twitter, so you'll get a little exposure. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to find out about the Addy over at Proctor's. And they've opened up and started producing. So stay tuned.